Hey everyone, and welcome back to Magic Towers Resort. In the last episode I promised that we would start working on the next area, so that's exactly what we're gonna do for episode 13 of Magic Towers Resort. So for the next area, my idea was, or at least I had some really good suggestions, and I tried to kind of combine a few different ideas that I saw and that I like myself as well. And I'll go into a bit more detail as to how I got into this theme in a little bit. But the idea for this area is basically going to be kind of like a snowy area, probably maybe somewhere in Alaska or something like that, somewhere up north, maybe even Antarctica. Though I'm gonna be placing 3, so I don't think that makes a lot of sense. Basically an area like that, but with a bit of a twist. Because a very popular suggestion that I saw in the comments was to create a steampunk area. Now, I could just go in and create just a standard steampunk area, but I figured why not actually try to combine it with this other landscape that I have in mind and kind of try to work the steampunk theme into that in a way that would make sense. And as I was kind of thinking about that, I also came across something else, and that is an episode by Review Time. Now, Review Time is a YouTube channel that goes into the history of theme parks and things like that as well. And they recently had an episode about, I think it was Disney Dubai. It's a project that never ended up being made, but the design studio that actually designed the park was... I should have written that name down. I think it was Favilli Studios. They're basically a design studio that has done more work for Disney in the past before. They redesigned Sunset Boulevard for... the Hollywood Studios park in Orlando, for instance, and there are a few other examples as well, I do believe. So basically they had a proposal for a Disney park and went to Disney with that. That's really just a long story short. But as I was learning more about this company, I found their website and went through some of their concept arts, which is where I discovered that Tokyo Disneyland, or more specifically Tokyo Disney Sea, was actually going to have an area called Glacier Bay, or at least that's what they had in their plans at the start. And the area was actually designed in a good amount of detail by that design studio. And I kind of forgot about it after that, but a few days later I was going through my books that I have, and I have this amazing book called Maps of the Disney Parks, I do believe. I was scrolling through that, and it has basically has a lot of pictures of maps for the Disney parks, both in the concept stages and also how they are being used in the parks. What I saw there was a map of the original concept map, basically, for Disney Sea. And what I found very interesting about that is that it actually had the Glacier Bay area on it as well. And I didn't realize that this area was pretty close in that case to actually being built, but apparently didn't get built. Someone told me a rumor that it was probably because another park in Japan already had like an Arctic type of area. Now, I looked up this park that it would be about. I don't think Disney would have really had to worry about the competition there, because it does not look like anything what Disney would have built. But that's the rumor that I heard. I'm not sure if that's true. However, I did really like the idea of that area, and something that I've been thinking about before is that we really... there just really aren't a lot of snowy type of areas inside of theme parks. Of course, we have SeaWorld Orlando, which... fairly recent addition is the Antarctica area there, where they have the penguin ride, which is it's a really interesting dark ride, where you're basically being showed how a penguin grows up, and then right at the end, a little bit of spoiler alert, I suppose, you're looking at a screen basically where you see the penguin swimming around, and then suddenly you turn around really quickly and the doors open up behind you, and boom, you're inside of the penguin enclosure, which is a really cool surprise if you don't know about it. I was quite amazed by that. Anyways, they did their Antarctica area really quite well. It's pretty well themed. It really gets the idea across. It is pretty good quality theming for a theme park. They did really well on that. And it's basically kind of built like an Arctic research station. They added some really cool frosting effects to their metal walls and things like that. Anyway, so long story short, I would like to see more of those kind of areas in theme parks, because right now I can't think of a lot of examples that do it. So that was a really long talk, and in the meantime, I've gotten a lot farther than that. So I've started building a roller coaster. A lot of you guys wanted to see another roller coaster, and I felt like one certain type of roller coaster was really missing in the park so far, and that's just a family coaster. So this coaster is supposed to be kind of like the Big Thunder Mountain of this park. It's a coaster that can be enjoyed by the entire family. Isn't too scary, even though we get some pretty large drops in there. But all in all, this is just meant as the not so scary roller coaster that just goes through a very nicely themed type of area. So it's a bit reminiscent of things like Big Thunder Mountain and Expedition Everest at Animal Kingdom. So that's kind of the idea that I'm going for. Now you can see me adding there a dual loading station. I would imagine that to help with the capacity of the ride. And something that I want to try and do is make that dual loading station actually functional. Now, I'm not sure yet if this is going to be possible, but very recently, basically yesterday at the time of recording this, the plugin API got an upgrade where we can now actually control ride vehicles completely. And that is gonna open up some really cool things, or at least there are a lot of things that we can do with that. So I want to try and experiment with that, and maybe it will allow me to actually add functional switch tracks and things like that. So I'm going to be experimenting with that just to see how that goes. Now, if that happens, then we will actually have it be functional, and otherwise we'll just only use one of the two stations. That's kind of the idea for this roller coaster. So it's going to be fairly long. It's going to have multiple lift hills. It's going to be able to accommodate quite a lot of coaster trains for as much as I can make that possible. Now, to transition the area from the American waterfront area to, I should actually say Cold Harbor, because that's the name that we gave it, to this icy glacier type of area. I figured that we could really nicely just transition by using some nature, because I'm still using the pine trees throughout this area. So in that sense, it would really make sense for people to go from the American area to this area. It's a very natural transition, I think, which I quite liked. It's a lot less abrupt than some of the other areas, and I think I talked about that a little bit in the previous episode as well. Now, for the architecture for this area, I'm mostly going off of the concept art from Favilli Studios, which has some basically like steampunk type structures that are all kind of colored in a copper kind of color. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do here as well. Now, I do want to make give this area a bit more variation, because in the end I do feel like it's maybe a bit too brown looking. So we can change that up in the future. Additionally, right now I only have one structure in the entire area. And hopefully in the future we can add a bit more. A bit more to the area, just to really put these structures inside of this area a bit more, as it is a bit disconnected perhaps right now. However, I do like how the roof angle kind of matches up with the coaster that's going up there. I think that's a pretty neat little touch. And since we're using a dome here, we're using the 4D cinema, I figured we might as well just turn that into a ride. maybe there's a simulator type ride in there. Actually, no, that building will be way too small for a simulator ride. Maybe just a little theater, something like that. But I figured I might as well actually use that ride since we're using it for its roof. Now, for the rest of this area, I'm not quite sure what else we're gonna do with it, but right now every single area in this park only has one e-ticket attraction per area, and I think it might be about time to make an area that actually has 2 e-tickets in it, because I feel like we don't have that many rides in the park yet. So I was kind of brainstorming about ideas for another e-ticket ride inside of this area. One of the ideas that I had was maybe to add a River Rapids ride. Now, I haven't built this yet, so that might be something for the next episode. But let me know if there are any other e-ticket type rides that you would like to see inside of this area, and what kind of ideas you have for that. Because I think it would be nice to try and tackle that while we can still edit without it taking up a whole bunch of extra space, basically. The cool thing with a River Rapids ride is that we of course can make it go outside to really be part of the environment, but we can also let it go inside for some dark ride moments. And you can see this happen with quite a lot of River Rapids inside of theme parks, actually. So that would be pretty exciting, I think, to add something like that and give some nice variation as well in terms of the type of ride that we have, because we don't really have any ride like that. Now, on the corner here, I wanted to create a quick service restaurant just to cover all the food needs of these people in this area, basically. And this building is really quite inspired by the SeaWorld Orlando Antarctica area. They have a shop right across the penguin ride. Empire of the Penguin, I think it's called. I can't remember. But right across there's a building that basically pops out a bit. It's really well themed. I quite like that building, so I kind of tried to make something that looks a bit like that, but of course in a more steampunky kind of theme. So that's really what I was trying to go for here. Now, I have one announcement to make actually regarding the plugins that I was talking about a second ago. I have released a new plugin, and this plugin is called Cheat Saver. Now, Cheat Saver allows you to save the cheats that you have set. Now, if you've used Open Rollercoaster Tycoon 2 before, you will know that every time you open up Open Rollercoaster Tycoon 2, you will have to enable the cheats again that you would like. Now, Cheat Saver solves this. With Cheat Saver, you just saw me use that there like a second ago, I think. You can basically select which cheats you would like to enable whenever you load a park. Now, there's one extra thing though, because it will only do that for parks that have a specific identifier, just to make sure that when you're playing in scenarios, it will not actually activate the cheats or anything like that, only in the parks where you actually want to use it. So it's really easy to use. You can install it using the link in the description below. I also have a tutorial video on how to install plugins on this channel. It's one of my latest videos. So make sure to check that out if that sounds interesting to you, because I'm sure that it will be very useful for a lot of people. And it was actually Mekit that asked me if that would be possible, which is why I ended up making it. Now, back to the roller coaster here. I'm kinda struggling with how I'm gonna be building this roller coaster, because as you can see, the first lift hill is really low. It's only 12 meters, I believe. And that doesn't give us a lot of momentum to do a lot with. So I was kind of struggling with trying to make that section after the lift hill long enough to match up with the distance between the station and the end of the lift hill. But I ended up just kind of digging into the ground a bit more, and that way I got a lot more momentum out of the train than I was getting at first. And it just felt a bit better to do it that way, because this section just feels a bit short as it is right now with the block breaks right there. And of course, after the block breaks, I wouldn't really be able to get the train really moving anymore because it's like really low. I can't see it right now, but that was like 8 meters, 6 meters, I don't know. So instead, dipping under the ground and then have the path go over that. And since we have this trench here now, we can actually use it several times, which is pretty interesting because I think Shanghai Disneyland does that as well with their... what is the roller coaster called again? They basically have like a Big Thunder Mountain type of roller coaster, but it's a very different type of ride. It dips down into the paths several times as well. So that's kind of what we can start using here as well now that we have that trench right there. Now, as I said, I wanted multiple lift hills, but the lift hill right there felt a bit wrong because it has a lot of speed still, so that wouldn't really make a lot of sense. So instead I'm trying to go with a block break, but once again, from the block break we can't really go anywhere. So I was a little bit stuck in this position. So what I ended up doing is I ended up deciding that we would just go over the water on the right there and just expand into that direction just a little bit more so that the coaster has a little area to go through on that side before coming back. That just gives a little bit more space and also allows the roller coaster to become a bit higher than it was at the start without actually having to peek over every single thing in the park, basically. Because that is also still a concern that I would like to consider. Now, as you can see, the roller coaster has some pretty steep drops for a family coaster. I'm not sure if these really would be as steep in real life if you were to see them. Let me know what you think about this roller coaster. But it just made it a bit easier to maneuver around all the elements that I had in mind for this area. Because otherwise, it does kind of look ugly if you only go with a just a regular slope down. Now here I'm just really quickly testing the timing for the block breaks because I wanted to have that done properly right from the start. There is one slightly awkward block break here, but I don't think it really is too much of a problem because we have a block break right before the lift hill. It basically means that the block break on the lift hill is not really going to be used anyways. I might actually remove that. But that's just the way it is, way it's laid out right now. And I think it works pretty well. And it allows a fair number of trains on the track at all time. So that's also a very nice thing. Now I'm using the purple track there to give some support to these elements where I don't want the supports to be showing all the time. Because I was kind of imagining this vista point there where you're looking inside of the area a bit. If you were standing outside of the area, and that would just be completely ruined if we had all of those supports there. So I really just wanted to make sure that we had a bit more of a it was a bit more visually open, because that was very important to what I was trying to achieve there. And I don't want the supports to ruin that. And I think it has plenty of supports as it is right now, so that is pretty good. Now at this point I think it's time to go back to the station. We've had a relatively long layout at this point, with several sections. I might actually expand this last bit right after the final brake run. Not the final brake run, but the second to last brake run. Just kind of match up with the length of the other sections. That would make the block break the block break timing a bit better for all the roller coasters. It would probably mean that we can add another roller coaster train to the coaster. So I think that would be favorable to try and do that. Maybe in the next episode, because I didn't quite do that yet. Now, in the center here, I figured that we might as well turn this into a show building that you go through. Now there are a few areas where you're a bit higher than the rest of the mountains there. So you just make sure to add some small buildings and theming on top of it that you actually go through, just to accommodate for that as well. But I'd imagine the show building basically to house some caves that you go through, which would be very reminiscent of Expedition Everest at Animal Kingdom. They basically have Mount Everest as the mountain that you go through with the roller coaster. And a large portion of the roller coaster is actually spent inside of the show building, which is themed as Mount Everest, which you just go through. Well, basically it makes it feel pretty fast when you're moving pretty close to all these cave walls, and they have some animatronics in there as well, like the disco jetty. Now, I'm not sure if we have a jetty in this ride. I don't think so. It wouldn't really fit the area, because this is of course not the Himalaya. But instead somewhere further up north. But I quite like how this mountain, or at least this mountain that we're about to build basically, or build up, is now like a proper show building as well. So it serves a purpose, or at least the inside of it serves a proper purpose now as well. And I quite like that. Just because I like to have, I like for things to have purpose inside of my park. Now regarding purpose though, at some points I think I might need to kind of let go of everything having a purpose, because I'm starting to see that I have a hard time just adding some random buildings here and there, because if it has no purpose, why actually build it? But of course there are always sheds and things like that are gonna be needed for some reason that you might not actually know about. And I think someone that does this really well is $2.20. He is a YouTuber who plays Parkitect, and his sense for realism and like backstage areas is like top notch. And it definitely inspired me to try and do that in Rollercoaster Tycoon 2 as well. He is currently working on his studios park, kind of like a Universal Studios type park. And it is starting to look really amazing. He's basically trying to build a park right in the middle of a city. With all the limitations that come with that, like having to build over top and under things. And it is very interesting. So definitely check him out, $2.20 on YouTube. He has some amazing Parkitect series that you can definitely check out. And this backstage areas, just in general, he spends a lot of time on them. And they end up looking extremely realistic, which I really admire. He's definitely one of my favorite theme park simulation game YouTubers, just because he spends that extra bit of time on the realism aspect as well. Anyways though, that's about it for this episode. And now if you like this video, make sure to like the video. If you have some friends that might enjoy this, make sure to share it with your friends, because that allows other people to discover these videos. And the same applies to liking this video, because that will make sure that this video ends up in people to recommended list. And then more people will be able to see these videos. As long as we keep growing this channel, I'll be able to continue. Anyway, so that's about it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.